The word microaggression is a very loaded word. We see it on like episodes of South Park. We see people kind of making fun of it. Some people get triggered by that word because they think it's stupid or it's silly or it's people being overly sensitive. Um, Regardless of the word itself, what a microaggression essentially is it's when there are folks who've had, basically a history because they, for example, they're gay or they're a minority or they have a very unique viewpoint that other folks don't necessarily agree with, and commentary that essentially somewhat ignorantly makes fun of them essentially around that particular thing. That's a microaggression. And the reason why microaggressions matter is because you can think of them like mosquito bites. Everybody gets, a little bit made fun of here and there, and sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not. But there's a certain set of people who get made fun of like this on a constant basis. And so those folks who are getting 100 mosquito bites within a month versus like the one, two, or three that somebody else might get, it makes it much more triggering when those things happen. So an example of a microaggression is, something like if somebody has an accent and somebody kind of makes fun of that accent. They might think it's not a big deal, right? But imagine how many times this person gets made fun of for their accent in their life, or just being surrounded by people who don't have an accent, right? That's a really common one. There are some, really common ones. For example, me being gay in my relationship, sometimes I'll say things like, so which one of you guys the guy and which one's the girl, right? Stuff like this where they're, it's like, I think they're being friendly, but when you hear things like this a lot, it starts to kind of grate on you a little bit, right? Another example of this is, a tall African American person at the workplace asking, "Hey, did you play sports in college, right? Or were you on a collegiate team?" Like making assumptions kind of based off of how somebody looks or general stereotypes. That kind of thing. Again, you don't think that it's mean. It's not intended to be insulting in any way, but when somebody's asked these types of things over and over and over again, it's that grating, like multiple mosquito bites thing that causes microaggressions to be so insidious. And because they're oftentimes well intended, that's what really makes these things hard to talk about, right? Because you're like, I didn't mean to insult you, if I'm talking about your accent, right? And the idea is you got to be able to talk about these things openly, because if somebody is made upset by these things, it's typically not irrational. It's typically because if you take in the context of their entire world outside of work and the many years that they've been hearing this same thing over and over again, right? Like for another example of this is, a lot of Asian folks have shared that people ask, so where are you really from? Right? No, where are you really, really from? It's like, well, I'm from Cincinnati. Well, no, where are you really from? Right? People are trying to make conversation. They're trying to be nice. They're not trying to be racist. And yet these questions are grating because they get them over and over again. And it has these implications that make people feel upset. So that's really what microaggressions are about. I think it's something that, regardless of the name, I mean, if you don't want to use the name, so be it. It's something that deserves attention in the workplace because it happens all the time. And again, because of the insidious, subtle nature of it, most organizations don't talk about it, and they should. Microaggressions are not about, like aggressive, conscious racism or anything like that. They're more about people just not knowing any better because they haven't had to live their life being asked the same questions over and over and over again. This is more about bringing awareness, right? So again, a conversation with folks for half an hour to an hour once every year or two is probably enough for your organization to be aware and sensitive that this is a thing they should care about.